Welcome everyone to TAP. Today we are talking to John Michael Greer about his newest publication, The Magical Writings of W.B. Yeats, the original A Vision, and other essays on occultism. Welcome back to the podcast, John.
Pleasure to be on again.
Yeah. And this time about a book that you did not write
Mhm.
yourself. You didn't write it, but you edited
No,
it.
no, I edited it.
Yeah.
William Butler Yeats.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers Yeats as a poet from literature. One of the, I mean, how many poets can you think of that made quite a decent living writing poetry? Figure, significant figure in Irish politics many
Mm.
years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he was also an occultist. He was an initiate of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the most prestigious magical order in the Western world. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, he was one of its leading figures. He wrote quite a bit about occultism. And although there's quite a literary industry among scholars publishing stuff about Yeats, doing books on Yeats, discussing this and that and the other Yeatsian thing, what very few of them want to talk about is occultism, or if they do, they talk about it in a very dismissive way. Poor
Mm.
Yeats, such says how it's sad when a man of genius gets caught up in such silly things. Well, one consequence of, there are important things that he wrote on magic that have never been published. They're still being sat on. My book does not cover those. I simply wanted a single anthology that had the great majority of his magical writings, and he wrote quite a bit about magic, enough to
Yeah.
fill a fairly hefty volume. So now that his published work is out of copyright, and nobody can say no, you can't. Um, I talked to the publisher, Eon Books. They said, "What a lovely idea!" And so we did a volume of the collected magical writings of William Butler Yeats.
It's legendary, John, that you've done this. It really is. You describe it as an unfortunate omission that Yeats' occult writings have never been gathered into a single convenient collection, and that's what you've done, right?
That's
Like
what
you
I've done.
say, and you say that it's intended actually for your fellow occultists.
Yeah. The thing is, anyone who wants to read Yeats's literary work, that's not hard. Your local public library, the shelves are groaning under that. But there are, I understand this is very frustrating and annoying for the rationalists among us and the academics and all these people who would much rather that occultism didn't exist. But it does. We're here. And they might as well get used to it. But even if they don't, we also buy books.
Yeah.
And we buy books and we like, and Yeats was the one major figure in the Golden Dawn tradition whose works had never been collected in a convenient anthology to be read by occultists. So I did not trespass in the ivory towers of scholarship. I did not produce a scholarly critical edition of these essays. This is a working collection for occultists, and the footnotes and everything, and introduction and so on, are there to give practitioners, especially but not only in the Golden Dawn tradition, some sense of what they have in their hands and how they can make use of it.
Mm. Okay, but let's get into it a little bit. There's no way we're gonna cover the whole thing because that's a lot. Uh, and there was, so maybe I should begin with this. There's like a big part of it that I didn't really understand because it was like there's a system. Did he create a system? It's
Oh yeah.
almost like he created
Oh
his own
yeah.
astrology or something.
Okay. The material, what you're talking about now, is a vision. That
Yeah.
was is yeah. That was. I mean, occultists have things like this happen to them. Okay. Shortly, he when he got married, he finally got over his long term crush on Maud Gunn, who had friend zoned him basically, and married Georgiana Hyde Lees, who was much younger than he was, and was crazy in love with him. He finally had a belated attack of common sense and married her. She was also a magician. She was a Golden Dawn initiate, as high ranking as he was. She was, if anything, she was the better educated of the two. She could read classical Greek. She could read Renaissance Italian. She studied a lot of ancient, medieval, and Renaissance magical texts. If she had been fond of publicity, of course, he was very fond of publicity. She hated publicity.
Mm.
If she loved publicity, she'd probably be more famous in occult circles than he was, because she was really good. But
Mm.
The one thing that really came out of that ended up being published, she didn't want her name on it, and she was very upset when that finally happened. She started doing automatic writing, as occultists very often do, a few days after the two of them got married, and started bringing through this astounding material about that was all keyed into 28 phases of the moon and these complicated geometries and different incarnations, a cycle of incarnations, and a theory of history and an understanding of the afterlife. Basically, a complete occult philosophy, as complex as, let's say, Dion Fortune's The Cosmic Doctrine, or or anything like that. It was extremely intricate. And she was producing this in automatic writing, and Yeats was collecting it and compiling it and testing it. And he published one version of it in 1925, which was kind of his version for occultists. And that version was privately printed. It was available for subscribers only, and not that many people had copies. Interestingly, one person who did was Carl Jung.
Okay.
I recently did an article, it hasn't been published yet, but it will be shortly. An article going over the occult books in Carl Jung's personal library. They made a catalog of it when he died.
There must be so many.
Well, actually, my guess is some things got pruned. My guess is the family went in because there were some very obvious gaps. There was a lot, for example, there was a lot of material by people associated with Aleister Crowley, but nothing by Crowley. My guess is the family went in, found the Crowley books, tipped them into the dumpster, and then called in the cataloging people. But it's a guess. But there was actually an enormous amount, and a copy of the 1925 privately printed edition of A Vision was one of them. Wow. One of these days, I'm going to be trying to pile into Jung's work before and after 1925 and see if I can trace any evidence of inspiration there. But setting that aside for the moment, that was the occult version. Then in 1937, this was the Great Depression had come along. Many of the occult organizations had collapsed. Yeats was getting very old. He did a new version that was much more literary and much more intended for his literary audience. That's the one that's been in print ever since. And the 1925 was completely unavailable for a very long time. And then there was a scholarly edition issued, a rather nice critical edition, I think in the late 1970s. That would be very hard to get. Recently, with the republication of Everything and His Mother-in-Law by Yeats, except, again, for a few things, the 1925 edition has become available again. But I decided to include it in this book because it's still not that widely known, and it is very much aimed for occultists. It has a lot of material in it that was dropped from the 37 version. Even 37 version has a lot more literary material in it. It has this marvelous comic fictional frame that is just, I wish Yeats had written more comedy. He was really good at it. Totally deadpan, totally hilarious, totally wacky, very Irish. And but there's none of that in the 1925 version. It was much more focused on, okay, occultists, here you go, have fun. So
it's a lot, and especially because you haven't necessarily heard about this before. I mean, I certainly did not hear about it before. If you've heard about maybe human design or something, then you have some kind of frame of reference. But this was like, oh, this is so mystical. I don't. Yeah, there's a lot.
It is not easy to get into. One of the projects I have going on right now online, in my blog, every month I'm publishing a commentary on part of A Vision, part of Yeats's book, A Vision, trying to walk people through it. And everyone's saying this is, because I've done this before. I've done it with several other books already. Yeah. I did it with Eliphas Levy's Doctrine and Ritual of High Magic. I did it with Dion Fortune's The Cosmic Doctrine. Both of those turned into actually published books of commentaries that have been very useful. My readers are saying this is tougher than either of those. It's very intense stuff.
But that's just part of the book, right? There's so many things that
that's just one part of the book. Much of the book is taken up with his more introductory essays, where he's talking about, okay, what is magic? How does it work? Why is it relevant to, say, if you happen to be an Irish poet or a creative artist? How does the magic of the past relate to what we're doing now? And so on and so forth. Much more readable, much more much more accessible, I think, to the reader
Yeah.
who doesn't have a lot of background.
Yes.
So,
Okay. I actually have a question more about the omission part.
uh-huh.
So, because it means like it's been left out. For some reason, this has been left out, and you've given some of the reasons. But I just thought about if it has to do with himself as well, because he says about feeling solitary and helpless. He says that from the moment when these speculations grew vivid, I had created for myself an intellectual solitude.
Hmm.
Most arguments that could influence action had lost something of their meaning. How could I
Hmm.
judge any scheme of education or social reform when I could not measure what the different classes and occupations contributed to that invisible commerce of Rivera and of sleep? So
Hmm.
there's something where he isolates himself because of these findings.
Well, that's actually something that's normal with any kind of serious occult or spiritual practice. I think of one of Manly P. Hall's books, which he titled, it's a collection of narratives about the spiritual path, and the title is "The Ways of the Lonely Ones," because when you take up any kind of serious practice, any kind of serious spiritual practice, you are moving into a solitary space.
Yeah.
And that's just that, the things you're dealing with are not things you can talk about with most people, and
Hmm.
many of them are things that are impossible to communicate in any way at all. Human language doesn't do it. And so there's some of that involved, and there was some of that involved in what he published and what he didn't publish. But the exclusion of very important parts of his work from publication because it was occult was not his doing.
Okay.
I'm gonna insert a little discussion here just so you have an idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
In the last years of the Golden Dawn, say from 1890 on, I think it was somewhere in the early 1890s, he had this grand project creating an Irish Celtic magical order. He had encountered a very typically Irish. He was boating on one of the lochs in Ireland and happened to find this little island that had a castle sitting on it. It wasn't actually an ancient castle. It had been built by some, a rich guy with crazy ideas.
Okay.
But it was still in perfectly workable condition. He had this sudden idea: we can lease this
To make a coven?
to make something much bigger, something like the Golden Dawn, to make an
Oh,
order, an initiatory order. And he saw that as being key, kind of the key to the inner side of the Irish cultural renaissance he was trying to kickstart. And so he started working on rituals. He started working on practices. He got other because a lot of the Golden Dawnies were very much into Celtic traditions at that point. And he got a lot of them into it. They wrote an enormous amount of material. It has remained completely unpublished, except there was a doctoral dissertation from an obscure university in 1977 that gives most of it. I have a copy of that.
okay.
But it's the Yeats people have been the Yeats industry, the academic industry has been sitting on this stuff. It includes not merely things of occult interest. It includes marvelous poetry and prose, and yet they won't publish it because it's occult.
That's so weird, man.
I wish it was weird. It's normal.
It's normal,
It's
but
totally
do,
normal in the academic scene.
would you think it's still like that? Or was it back in the days? Do you
Oh,
think it
they still haven't published it.
no, but if it was today that someone like him was famous, would they not have published his magical writings?
Good question. That really depends. I don't. The thing is, I don't know who out there in the academic scene. Well, actually, no, I do. I know. I'm not going to name any names. He is safely retired at this point, but I knew a guy. That's a
Yeah.
Rhode Island phrase. I know a guy. I knew a guy who was he was a professor, tenured professor at an American university in a science or technical field. I won't get any more specific than that. He used a double layered set of pseudonyms to publish books on the occult things that interest him. He had
Okay.
the name that his stuff was published under, and then he had the name he used to interact with people behind that, and his own name was entirely sheltered because even though he was a tenured professor in a field that had nothing to do with anything of the kind, he was very sure that if it came out that he was the author of these books, he would lose his job.
Yeah.
Um, it happens. There were Stephen Flowers. You may have seen the work of Edred Thorson, which was his pseudonym. Stephen
Okay.
Flowers was considered the best scholar, the best American scholar of German languages and literature. In his generation, he wrote a brilliant dissertation on connections between the Norse runes and magic. Except word got out that he was Edward Thorson, and he ended up, the only teaching gig he could get was teaching, first year German at a community college in rural Texas.
Huh.
Because he was blacklisted because he was a pagan.
Oh man.
So that was not that long ago. So
Right.
it's still a real thing. I am hoping at some point there are some questions as to the exact copyright status of the Castle of Heroes material right now, but I am hoping at some point to be able to find a way to get it into print, because it's, again, whether or not you happen to be interested in the occult dimensions, of course I am, but whether or not that's of interest, the prose and the verse are glorious. It's Yeats during one of his most creative periods. This should be in print.
Yes.
So
That's why I call it legendary, and I don't say that word lightly. I really think this is amazing work you're doing with getting this out. And also I really recognize what you said about that you can't necessarily talk about it. I'm an astrologer, and I just started a new work, and it doesn't matter which work it is, it's the same everywhere, where it can be fun to talk about it because people will know the signs, but it's very quickly we get to a point where we cannot talk about it, because if for me it's not just a few keywords that are fun.
exactly.
It's an entirely different world, and it goes so much deeper, and it's just you cannot say it when
No.
you're not with fellow occultists.
Oh yeah. Well, I know. I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that many. And astrology is a great example, actually, because in America certainly. So what's your sign? That's about as far as it goes.
Yeah.
And if you say, well, yeah, my sun's here and my moon's there and my rising signs there, all of a sudden it's the blue screen of death shows behind the eyes.
Yeah. So I just really recognize that part when you said, like, there's so much you can't express, and
exactly.
So it's even more important to get this stuff out for people who've thought about it.
So people who are interested. I had the immense good fortune. I ran across a copy of Vision, the 1937 edition. It was released it's been in various paperback editions, but I got a paperback copy of it at a used bookstore in Seattle in about 1987. And I knew at that point that Yeats was an occultist. I know he was involved. I was doing a lot of Golden Dawn stuff in those days. So I saw this thing. Whoa, this is totally over my head. I'm buying it. So that's when I started just, reading it and trying to make sense of it. It is not a fast process.
Right.
But so that in turn led to an interest in Yeats's other work, and eventually to this book that's just out.
To this.
Yeah.
So
and further projects as they proceed.
They seem to keep coming for you.
Oh yeah. Well, I like to write. It's fun.
Yes. That's what you're here for. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm choosing from many questions here, but what about mediumship? Because he talks about that our most elaborate thoughts, elaborate purposes, precise emotions are often, as I think, not really ours, but have a sudden come up, as it were, out of hell or down out of heaven. Whoa.
Oh yeah. Now, first of all, keep in mind, Yeats was, as well as being a first-rate occultist, he was what we now call a psychic researcher, a parapsychologist. So he was a member of the Society for Psychical Research, the first parapsychology research organization in the world, which was founded in England. And he did a lot of investigation for them, especially of spiritualist mediums, because that was a lot of what they did in their early days. He knew mediumship inside and out. He attended seances. He busted frauds. He was heavily involved in that whole scene. But one of the things that led him to notice is that trance mediumship is not as eccentric, not as unusual, not as outside ordinary human experience as it seems. It's simply the kind of the extreme form, the form where the medium actually sets usually her personality aside completely to let other beings speak through her. Whereas we are all constantly, we're all like radios. Okay, we're picking up on, and depending on how well our tuning system goes, we may be picking up on various different things all at once. And so very often, yeah, these thoughts that come to us, these sudden desires and cravings, these um, good ideas, bad ideas, um, the collective passions. Think of the World Cup. Okay,
Yeah.
people are not going to those stadiums by their millions to watch some guys kick a this leather bag around. Okay, they're there to take part in the vibe, to
Yeah.
catch the emotional rush
Mm.
of tens of thousands of people leaping to their feet and cheering a goal. That's an amazing rush, and it's something that many people are very addicted to. It's
Yeah.
the same reason people go to rock concerts. Same reason people go to the kind of pulpit pounding, fire and brimstone church service that is so popular over here in the U.S. For example, it's all about picking up on this sort of flow of things from other minds. Now
Mm.
we most people can more or less deal with that when they think they're just talking about other living human minds. But we are never alone, and when we think we're alone, we're actually less alone than usual. The living and the dead, the embodied and the disembodied, the human and the non-human, there is no rigid barrier between them. And so Yeats was one of the reasons that Yeats became very focused on magical training is that he thought that one of the foundations of creativity was being able to open yourself to the inspirations that come from the higher planes and to kind of gently close the door to the static that comes from lower planes. And
Mm.
so yes, so that was something that he felt was very important. Of course, the fact that his wife was a very accomplished medium, was extremely good at it, and as the materials she brought through in a vision demonstrates. Um,
Yeah.
so he had to. So he was. It's actually really interesting because the historically speaking, in many cultures, the male sorcerer and the female medium who are married is a thing. It's actually a very common kind of practice. Go figure. But Yeats, the Yeatses were very much an example of that tradition at work.
Like symbolically or for
No,
real?
actually, like I think
Okay.
um, for family reasons, my stepfamily's Japanese American, and for that reason, I know a fair amount. I ended up learning a fair amount about Japanese folk religion, and
Ah.
in Japan, very often you have um, a medium, and you have a shogenja, a sorcerer, or an ascetic, somebody who practices typically Buddhist ceremonial magic. We might as well call it that. That's what it amounts to. And the two of them are literally husband and wife. That's just what you do if you are a young Miko or a young Shugenja, and you're looking to get your career started. You look for an appropriate partner and you get married,
Perfect.
and then you proceed to settle into a long career of some he summons the spirits, she gives them voice, and you can find out, is there is the fox spirit who has possessed somebody and causing all this damage, what is the fox spirit upset about, what offerings, if they're a ghost, okay, we can deal with the ghost, what is the ghost upset about,
Mm.
is there an angry deity, are there oni or some other kind of yokai involved,
Mm.
and it's all, in Japanese folk tradition that was normal.
Mm.
And so I see it's particularly funny, of course, because Yeats himself was very strongly influenced by Japanese tradition. He knew the no plays very well. He knew Japanese folklore very well. He had a lot of Japanese friends.
I mean, you have a footnote on that where you say there are parallels between Irish folk occultism of his time and Japanese folk
To an
occultism.
amazing degree.
Yeah.
I've recently picked up a copy. Give me just a moment. I've got to reach for
Yeah.
it. Um, give a little plug. Michael Dylan Foster's book, The Book of Yokai. Yokai is Japanese monsters. If you
Okay.
know your way around anime, you know about yokai.
Okay, I don't.
Fox spirits and oni and kappa and all these kind of critters.
Mm.
So he's basically doing an encyclopedia of Japanese monsters.
Mm.
Japanese monsters in folklore, and the number of parallels between what they're doing and Irish fairy lore is amazing.
Mm.
And Japan, why this should be equally, of course, Japan, like Ireland, like certain parts of northwestern Europe, it has the burial mounds, it has the standing stones, it has the alignments. I don't think they call them ley lines, but you could. It has all these same things, which you don't often find in between. How these ended up as parallel structures at the opposite ends of Eurasia is a fascinating question that I don't.
But don't you think? I think he says something in the book about like going back in time. Did he sometimes maybe imagine to be somewhere else in time?
Yeah, well, he like almost all occultists, he believed in reincarnation.
Yeah.
And he also when he was doing certain kinds of trance work, which of course he did, he experienced what seemed to be previous lives.
Right. Yeah.
And he just, in fact, his essay on magic, he talks about some of those memories and how specifically those were brought through. It's one of the reasons that essay is well worth close study. And so, yeah, it's just the world.
So that could be the reason, right? That he transported himself back to a time where he knew this stuff from another culture.
Always a possibility, or that he was attuning himself to, as he himself believed, he was in communication with disembodied intelligences who could pass it on to him, who had a more complete knowledge of the world, not being limited by material bodies.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's why I was clapping a little bit when you mentioned the dead, because he speaks a lot about the dead and the dead living in their memories. And yeah, there's a whole thing about that. I mean, so like, do you think everything we can? I'm asking you, but I'm also asking him through you, in a way.
I can say this is we're getting very close to a Yeatsian idea here. Yeah, so I'm kind of intellectually channeling William Butler Yeats here.
I mean, do you think like an instinct is actually the dead, an instinct, an impulse we can get?
That was certainly his opinion. That in fact, in effect, when let's say a bird knows that it should fly south for the winter, the reason it knows is there are all of these souls of dead birds that have not yet been reborn who are dreaming of their flights. And that produces it, that transmits through the linkage between mind and mind. So the young bird who's never made that journey before is just going, oh, I know where to go. I sense this, this pull in this direction. If I go there, that's the right thing. In the same way, I'm thinking here of Rupert Sheldrake and his work on morphogenetic fields. And of course, he's used a very scientific, very materialistic morphogenetic fields. It sounds very much like what a physicist would come up with. But from Yeats's perspective, what he's talking about is the dreams of the dead. Those lay down, I'll jump to the unfortunate tracks in space, patterns that tend to replicate themselves over time. And so we, the living, are acting out the dreams of the dead.
But that's poetic, but he means it as a reality.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, he's a poet. I mean, for him, poetry is reality.
Yeah. Good. It's not like we are literally living out the dreams of the dead. Meaning when I die, can I dream something and someone else is going to live it?
You will dream, because that's how you process the events of this life. You will dream through everything you've experienced, seeing it from all different angles, repeating it in various different ways. He talks about this in a vision. And those dreams lay down patterns. They radiate out from your soul as it dreams the dreams of death. And anyone who is sensitive to that, anyone who is attuned to the kind of thinking that you're doing in that dream, they can pick up on that. They can be drawn into it for good or for ill.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, the nightmares. I mean, when you look at situations where like entire nations have gone crazy, sometimes the dreams of the dead are nightmares, and sometimes a lot of people get caught up in them.
I just remembered a quote that I wrote down. All things dying each other's life, living each other's death.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's probably something else, but it just reminds me a little bit of this.
Very, very much so.
Okay.
Yeats had, I think, a better understanding of the idea of yin and yang than almost any other European thinker of his time. The idea that everything is in this dynamic combination where everything's in perfect balance, but it's always a moving balance. It's never static. It's never the kind of rigid moral dualism you get, for example, in exoteric Christianity, where there's the good and the bad, and the good's going to win. What is good in one age typically is bad in the next.
Yeah.
In classical Greek times, what we would call egomania was a virtue.
Egomania?
Egomania. Aristotle talks about megalopsychia, being great-souled, we'd say having a big ego. But that's actually an important state, because it leads to, in his view, self-respect and striving to accomplish noble things, because you scorn the thought that you would do anything less than that. And, go forward 1,000 years or so, and you're in the depths of the Christian period, when that kind of thing was the worst possible sin, and you had to abase yourself and feel dreadful about how sinful you were, and that was the key to being a good person. So you see there, and he actually talks about this again in A Vision, where how each age is the opposite of the one that comes before it, but each one changes that in a different way. So, as by his calculations, we're moving into, out of one cycle into another cycle, and a lot of why everything's up in the air right now is that we're still in the middle of that jumble.
So he's talking. So when we're reading him now, he's still talking about us now, even though this was like 100 years ago.
Yeah, no, he was writing in 19. The particular calendrical section, as I recall, was written in 1923. And he explained exactly where Europe was in this cycle of the 28 phases. And you can count ahead from there fairly easily to realize where we are right now. And
so where are we? What phase are we in?
Okay, by my calculation, because he doesn't give the exact dates, by my calculation, we are just finishing the phase of the hunchback. We are moving into the phase of the saint. The phase of the hunchback is noted by a tendency to violate all moral rules. Everything has to be stood on its head. Everything has to be rejected and defied. And, think of our arts, think of our architecture, the worship of ugliness that pervades modern culture, the insistence that every limit is bad. We're moving right now from the hunchback into the phase of the saint. We're seeing a resurgence of religion. We're seeing a resurgence of morality in both a good and a bad sense. On the one hand, people trying to be more moral. On the other hand, people trying to stuff their morality down other people's throats. So we're moving from the 26th to the 27th phase. The phase after that is the Fool, where everything becomes completely incoherent. And
the Fool, would that be a new cycle, or this?
No, that's the end. That's the end of the old cycle. And then we pass into the new moon, the period, which is kind of a hang time, where everything just sort of stumbles blindly along. And then after that, probably somewhere between 2050 and 2100, the new cycle will start to begin. So we are in the guttering remnants of an old cycle.
We're in the end times.
Yeah, and but the end times in a very Yeatsian sense, because things are winding down, but they're not. It's not apocalypse. The world ends. The world will end at 10 o'clock tonight. Film at 11.
Okay, good. No.
You can actually, if you look at the cycle, you can predict where things. I mean, when the hunchback phase came in, I figure more or less probably the best. Depending on where you were in the Western world, sometime between 1978 and the early 1980s. In America, it was the election of Ronald Reagan. In Britain, it was the election of Margaret Thatcher. The point where greed is good, and this whole cult of ugliness and immorality became, which is the spirit of the hunchback. And now we're moving into a period where that's going away. You're seeing a lot of more traditional morality, and that's going to gradually become more and more incoherent as we move on into the stage of the Fool, and you're going to hear a lot of slogans that have nothing behind them.
But that's
I know that's the thing is there's a broader sense in which we're already there.
Yeah.
But within this specific narrower cycle, we still have to get there.
But that's a long time till the Fool comes, right?
Oh, it's going to be probably. I would guess somewhere between maybe 2050 and 2080.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then we pass into the new moon, the period where coherent thought basically stops. And it's all just a sort of moving ahead on momentum. And then very quietly, in a very subtle way, the first stirrings of the new influence start coming in. And it will be the opposite of everything we expect it to be. So if you read everybody talking about like the age of Aquarius, I grew up with hair, okay?
Yeah.
You know,
You grew up with that promise in a way.
yeah, the age of Aquarius,
Yeah.
sympathy, understanding, empathy, and trust abounding. It's garbage. That's not what Aquarius is like. Aquarius is rather intellectual. It is rather cold. The ancients said it was ruled by Saturn, the greater malefic. Moderns say it's ruled by Uranus, the planet of catastrophes and of eccentricity, madness, and sudden change.
And technology, right?
And technology, there we are. And so technology for both good or ill. A nuclear bomb is a very Uranian phenomenon. So all of the stuff we were hearing, the sympathy and understanding, that's all Piscean. It's totally Piscean unity. It's this Neptunian influence. Everyone trying to pull everything together into an illusion of unity.
Yeah, because I think because it was people in the Piscean era expecting this, and we can only anticipate from where we are at in a way.
Exactly. And in exactly the same way in the Age of Aries. People who were trying to imagine the change of the world, the coming of the new world, it was going to be a triumphant warrior king. Except it wasn't. You read Virgil or what have you, and you get this. Well, Virgil actually almost got it. He was a visionary, but most of them, you read like the Jewish prophets and so on. They expect a triumphant warrior king to impose peace on the world in a very Aryan kind of way, but that's not what they got.
But what came instead? Are you talking about the Taurian age?
No, I'm thinking the Age of Aries giving way to the Age of Pisces.
Right, like that.
Instead of another, a kind of ultra Aryan, a kind of uber Aryan.
That's the thing you have to remember. You go back.
You go back,
like, it's the other order.
We're stumbling backwards through the zodiac over time, exactly. And so, which is why we're going from Pisces to Aquarius now. But they were gearing up for something even more Aryan than the Age of Aries, and what they got instead were a whole series of religions of self-sacrifice and renunciation and self-abasement.
Yeah.
All the things that were completely unthinkable to the mind of the Age of Aries, because each age has to fill in the mistakes of the age that it replaces. So there's a lot of go ahead.
I have to ask you, because you mentioned that we've become more religious now, or that is one movement in the modern society. But religion, and now you're talking about the Pisces era. Do you think it's how bad is it gonna be with that more conservative religious wave?
Okay, that wave, the conservative religious wave is temporary.
Okay.
It's something to revert to a completely different thinker, although one that Yeats actually respected very greatly, Oswald Spengler. This is his second religiosity. This is the return to religion as attempt to stave off social chaos. If you listen to people talk about Christianity now, for example, very few of them actually talk about God. They're talking about how important Christianity is as an anchor for social stability.
Oh, okay.
And how important it is. These are our cultural roots. This is it's important for public morality. That's the second religiosity. Now, as the Age of Reason collapses around us, having run into the inevitable limits to human reason, people are fleeing towards some kind of ideology that will make the world still make sense. It's the same thing that happened in late pagan times when people returned to the worship of Jupiter and and all of the old gods. It was kind of bloodless. It was kind of lifeless, and it was mostly people from the privileged classes who were spearheading this, because they were the ones with the most to lose as things fell apart. Meanwhile, a completely different religion was spreading through the crawl spaces. In the same way, I think you'll find that the current religious movement, the expression of the faith of the saint, is going to be primarily a matter of the comfortable classes, the privileged, people who have something to lose in the event that the in the event that society becomes more corroded, more broken down, and that what's going on under the surface, what's going on among the urban poor, what's going on in rural society, what's going on in all kinds of little enclaves and subcultures that nobody's thinking of. That's where the real future is taking shape. The future, I mean, in every age, you get these people, you get these tenured intellectuals, these wealthy, comfortable people who are sure that they're the creative class. They're the ones who are thinking the thoughts that matter. They're purely symptomatic, and nothing they do will last. The actual people who make the future, are living in decaying urban slums or little ethnic communities out on the fringes. They're the followers of some minor guru in Rio de Janeiro right now.
How are they the future? I mean, they're probably not going to be remembered. So how are they the future?
Because they're setting in motion patterns of thought and feeling and imagination.
So we're back to the stream, and
we're back to the stream. In the same way, I mean, if you look at the rise of Buddhism, you look at the rise of Christianity, we're talking about things that started out with a tiny circle of followers of some completely batty, eccentric thinker who nobody respectable would even consider listening to. But that message was the counterpart, was the opposite of everything that the mainstream culture was pushing, and the mainstream culture had already pushed it far enough that it was running straight face first into collapse. So, as the pendulum swung the other way, from what Yeats calls antithetical to what he calls primary, because there's this back and forth, from the yang to the yin, from the yin to the yang. So it was swinging in the other direction, and it so happened that, I mean, there were a lot of little groups following little gurus in the late Roman world, and it happened that one of them caught the imagination of enough people and became Christianity.
So interesting.
And okay. So my point is that the same thing is doubtless happening right now. Again, somebody there's some little guru in Rio de Janeiro or in Milan or in Jakarta, or heaven knows where, could be any place.
Yeah.
Who is, sitting in the midst of 12 followers, not one of whom is more than 25 years old, and who is laying down this amazing rap that contradicts everything our culture, everything our modern global culture insists on. And that right there is where the wave of the future is being born.
That can be picked up by our creative and collective imagination.
And the followers of that small-time guru, as they spread across the world, are communicating that to other people in a very verbal sense. Have you heard the word of blah, whatever it happens to be. And if it's powerful enough, if it speaks to the unrealized needs, the unfulfilled desires of an age,
that's the thing. Okay.
All right.
I'm getting it. I'm piecing it together. Good.
And then over a period of centuries, it gradually it goes from being this sort of this fringe phenomenon to being the center, the seed around which everything else formulates.
I just have a personal question for you, and then I'm gonna go back to my list, and we just have like 15 minutes left, so lots to talk about. But just in related to this, I am highly considering. I feel I have it in me to. I'm asking you also as a writer, to write a book about religious trauma, something that is termed by someone years ago, and just from my own perspective. But I'm actually thinking when you, what I've been thinking myself is that, is it even a way? Does it even matter? I mean, should I write about something else? Because maybe religion is out anyway. Because religious trauma should also argument for let's not do this to each other, right?
Well, no. In fact, it would be a very good idea to write such a book, precisely because as old religious forms break down and new religious forms emerge, if more people are aware, no, let's not do this to each other. Let's not make this kind of habit part of our faith. Let's do something less destructive. I think that'd be a very good thing. Now, I expect actually that to be, I expect the next cycle, if you will, to be much more receptive to that kind of thing anyway, because it's, your typical Piscean personality pulled in two directions. So you have all the focus on love and peace, and then then you lose your temper and beat the crap out of your children. You have that duality, which is so heavily present in Piscean religions.
Yeah. Do you remember that I'm a Pisces? Is that what you're talking about? Or you don't? You're talking about...
No, I didn't happen to remember that, but I've noticed many of the people I know who have Sun in Pisces, or who have a stellium in Pisces, have that pull in two directions. They have to, and if they can resolve it constructively, that's great. But if they're sufficiently unevolved, they'll slam from one to the other, and that's not a good thing. Now, I will do you the credit of assuming that you're one of the more evolved ones and have managed to balance those two sides of yourself in a constructive way.
Long time ago.
There we go. But there's a lot of people who have not. And unfortunately, one of the problems with astrological ages is that most people are not very far involved, and so each astrological age tends to amplify the negative as well as the positive to a very large degree. So we've seen, in the Piscean age, we've seen a lot of people. There's been a lot of focus on compassion. The development of the ideal of compassion is a major religious theme. Things like campaigns against slavery for the first time in known human history. That's one of the achievements of the Piscean era.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, we can find plenty of the downside of Pisces as well. And in the same way, in the Aquarian era, that we'll see both the good and the bad sides of Aquarius.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a way, it would be for the Aquarius era to say this is what happened in the Piscean era. The effect of it is
exactly. True. And so having anything that will encourage people to reflect on the problems with the causes of religious trauma and do something else strikes me as a good thing.
Okay, thank you. I hope you're not just saying that, but I don't.
No, I'm not just saying that.
I don't take you as the pleasing type.
The thing is, no, I'm not. I'm autistic. Okay, I do not. I really, truly do not feel your pain.
Hey, amazing. Oh, I'm the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, well, but I would have expected that from Pisces.
Yes.
Water is not. I do not have a strong water presence in my horoscope.
No. Okay, I'll just share with you now that we are talking about a little bit about astrology. That because I usually say something about the guest astrology, but today I just wanted to say you have the same sun sign as W.B. Yeats. How about that? Okay. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah. No, Sun in Gemini, Moon in Leo rising.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
All the hair. Well, Leos always have, they always have a lot of hair.
Yeah. No, you have a good synastry, I thought. Did you look it up? Did you look up your synastry with it? Okay, you are a nerd. I like it.
I'm a serious nerd. No, I'm not that good at natal astrology yet, but I'm studying it. And of course, I'm doing it the usual way by focusing on my own chart.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But you did see that you have good chemistry. That's good. Nice. Okay. I actually also wanted to know about the term anti-self. Could we talk a little bit about that?
Okay.
Anti-self.
Yeats had his philosophy of creativity, his philosophy generally, was one that I think many people nowadays will find very, very uncomfortable. Because we tend to think that, you have these talents and the things that are easy for you, that are natural for you, and that's what you should do. And Yeats is saying, no. No, if you do that, you're going to produce schlock. To produce genuine creativity, you have to do what is the absolute hardest thing for you to do. You have to find the opposite of yourself and pursue that in your creative work. He talks about himself. He was a very nervous, very geeky, very gawky, awkward, especially as a young man, He was a dweeb, okay? Um, he was not your manly Adonis type, which makes it all the funnier that when he and Aleister Crowley went at it mano a mano, he threw Crowley down a flight of stairs.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but no, he was this very nervous, very shy, very awkward person, and he discovered that to actually achieve something in poetry and drama, he had to take on this completely opposite sense of self, where the kind of person who could stare a firing squad in the face and not blink.
Can I just say something
Yeah.
partly here before? Because so he's Gemini in the sun sign and also Mercury, and also he has Uranus conjunct his sun.
Mm-hmm.
So that's double on the nervousness because it could be a Gemini thing with Mercury, but definitely when Uranus is there as well. But it's also
Mm-hmm.
this huge intellect and inspiration and
Mm-hmm.
what have we.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it could be like a nervous person. Just
Oh, yeah.
there's some
And
nervous system going on
and
there.
and he has both. He was
Yeah,
both. He was a genius, and he was a very geeky, nervous, awkward person.
yeah.
But his whole idea of creativity was that you create by going outside of your comfort zone. You create by going to the opposite of your comfort zone. And so and it was as he realized that he went from the kind of the very skilled but rather precious poetry of his early period, a lot of the very Irish stuff, I will rise and go now and go to Innisfree and all this kind of stuff. You get into the later Yeats, which is just echoingly beautiful, calm and clear like a marble statue.
Mm.
And he achieved that by trying in his creative life to pursue what he ended up calling the mask. There's the will and the mask, and they're always the opposite. The will is who you are, the mask is what you're trying to achieve. And if you do the opposite, if you just do what comes naturally, again, you produce schlock. You
Mm.
bad art. And in fact, one of the reasons that so much of our modern art and literature sucks is precisely that so many people have been taught, just let it flow naturally. The kind of thing that destroyed modern poetry.
Is that what he called? He also talks about the modern bias.
Yeah,
Maybe partly that.
it's very, very much so, and it is something that happens at this phase of the creative cycle, this phase of the cycle of civilizations, because every civilization starts out in what he would call the primary half, where it's
Mm.
very much focused on what's materially there. And a civilization that's being born has to focus on things like building roads, building houses, keeping itself fed. And then gradually, as it develops, as it goes around the cycle, you get more and more into creative possibilities. You open up more and more intellectual possibilities. You have the emergence of the society's age of reason. Literature becomes more of an issue. The arts, philosophy, whatever science that they practice, and then it goes back around the other way toward the end
Then
of the cycle, back into the primary, and it becomes more and more materialistic, more and more fixated on those basic material realities. It loses track of the necessary opposition that allows great creative things to happen, and eventually it all dissolves into incoherence again.
Oh man.
Now,
Okay. Yeah,
if
creation, destruction.
exactly, if you were looking for something to affirm the modern, frankly, religious belief in progress, Yeats run the other direction rather than read Yeats. He does
Yeah.
not believe in progress. He believes that civilizations rise and then they fall.
Ah.
And it's a cycle. It's not a line.
Okay, but so the mask and the will, maybe you will do the favor to the listeners who are going to read this book to explain a little bit more about that. Just like because there was several words there with a capital.
Oh yeah.
The first
Okay.
that was
There are four parts of the self. Okay.
yeah.
There's the will, which is kind of your conscious self. The will is the part of you who knows how to do things. It knows how to open windows, how to drive a car, how to hopefully make an internet connection work.
Yeah.
It knows how to do things, but it doesn't have any of its own goals. It's purely the part of you that manages. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the creative mind, which is the part of you that understands the world. Sometimes these two are united. Sometimes they're very far apart. and that because the will in Yeats's scheme, the will goes counterclockwise around the wheel, the creative mind goes clockwise. So the two of them unite at certain points, diverge, unite, diverge, and so on. So
Oh, beautiful.
there are some phases where what you know how to do is in a complete opposition with what the way you understand the world. And so,
Yeah.
and those are very difficult phases. And there are others where they're very close together and you get along pretty well.
So what would you say? What could an example be of the creative part of your mind? What would that
Well,
be?
because what Yates is saying, we he says creative mind because we don't just understand the world as it is. We literally imagine the world into being.
Yeah.
Most of what we know about the world, if I may use some scare quotes here, is actually stuff we what we get when we're born, what we get as when we get out of bed every morning is this buzzing, blooming confusion of sensory input. Okay, we assemble it in our imaginations into the image of a world. And one
Mm.
of the reasons that we have as much power over the world as we do is because we can learn to reimagine it in other ways. If you wonder why, you and the person you're talking to, you're trying to make sense of the world, and you literally think, "My God, we live on different planets." Well, in effect, you do, because if you're imagining the world differently enough, you might as well be, one of you's on Neptune, one of you's on Mercury. Okay,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so that's that. Thought is always a creative process. We tend to lose track of that at
Okay.
certain parts in the cycle. Thinking about the world, understanding the world is always a work of the imagination. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now, the
Yeah.
opposite of the will is not the creative mind. The opposite of the will is the mask, and those go around. Those go around in the same direction. The mask again is the ideal. It's the thing you want most, and the thing you want most is always as far as possible from what you are and what you have.
Yeah. Okay. And the mask, it sounds like something that's superficial, but that's not how he talks about
No,
it.
no,
Huh?
it's totally not superficial.
Yeah.
Um, it's the idea is he came up with the idea because again he was exploring this in terms of creativity, as though as an artist you put on the mask of another person as different from you as possible so that you can create.
Mm.
But he ended up just seeing this as like the image of the beloved, the image of what you desire. And it's always a mask because you're not actually seeing the reality. You're seeing the image of your desire.
Ah.
You're seeing the image of your hopes and dreams. Um, in a certain sense, you're seeing your 11th house there. But it's also the seventh house. It's your one true love. It's the partnership you hope to find, but may or may not. Um, and then the opposite of the creative mind is what he calls the body of fate. And the body of fate consists of everything that happens to you.
The body of fate.
The
I really
body of
love that. That's
the,
so interesting. It's
the
like
body
all our habits and
Yeah, and everything your habits, but also the habits of the world. Okay, the when you trip on the step coming up to you, that's part of your body of fate. That step is tripping. What everything that happens to you in life is part of your body of fate, and so that is what the creative mind has to struggle to understand.
uh,
Why did
uh,
I trip? Okay, that's something for the creative mind to kind of fit into its image of the world. And equals so the will is pursuing the mask, is trying to retain the mask. The creative mind is trying to understand the body of fate, and these two are rotating in different directions from life between life and life. And so there are very difficult lives where the will and the creative mind are as far as possible from each other.
yeah.
So what you understand about the world and what you want out of the world are at complete loggerheads, and the mask and the body of fate are as far as possible from each other. The world that you want and the world that you got have nothing to do with each other. And so that incarnations like that suck. They are very
And but does you don't think that we can work on that?
well.
Change it?
That's what happens in the incarnations that follow.
Oh, okay.
Because there are also incarnations where they all click together,
Mm.
where the will and creative mind are one. Where
And
the
did
yeah,
he channel this information or
yeah, his wife did.
what?
His wife did.
His wife? Okay,
Yeah,
so this
this
is
is all
part
this
of her
yeah,
vision.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she was the medium. But yeah, so there's this entire cycle. And here's the thing.
Wow.
It's true of a cycle of lives, but it also happens in every individual life. It happens in the lives of organizations, of nations, of football teams, of any group. It happens in artistic movements. It happens in everything. Follows this pattern in his approach. Everything can be understood using this twofold pattern of will and mask, creative mind and body of fate. So
Interesting.
you were wondering why all this is really, really complex. That's why it's really, really complex.
Yeah.
To explain the entire universe.
Yeah. Yeah, but this was better for me to understand. I'm really glad you've given this key to. Then it's easier when you read it to go deeper. When you just gave this overview.
Well, that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I'm working on a detailed commentary to a vision
Right.
to walk people through all
Yeah.
that stuff, because it is not easy. It is not
And
easy to understand, but
and
it's a very powerful tool if you do understand it.
okay, two questions there. So why hasn't it shown up in some other, or has it shown up in some other disguise? Because usually it's like that with spiritual wisdom, then it will come up.
I don't. Well, partly I think it's. I mean, it's taking its time.
Okay.
I think. I think things. I mean, for a long time, when Yeats's work was all copyrighted, there was only so much people could do with it. There
Mm.
have been some attempts to make sense of it in an astrological setting, which didn't work very well because they didn't pay attention to what Yeats himself said. Yeats, by the way, Yeats and Georgie, he and his wife were both expert astrologers, by the way.
I could imagine with his chart. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's an
Well,
expert astrologer.
I have the 4-volume set of the collected all of the surviving notes that went into a vision, all of the papers that were written down, all of the channeling sessions and so on, and they're constantly illustrated with little horoscopes.
Okay.
He's constantly
Brilliant.
drawing in a little bit of a horoscope here and putting in a planetary aspect there because they both understood that,
I
and the
get that.
communicators did too. So that was a language they could use. So
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of underlying astrology in this, but you can't. Crucial point: you cannot read your personal phase off your horoscope.
No, his system of phases does not work
Does not, yeah,
together.
it does not work if you try to read it off the moon or if you try to
No,
read off anything in the chart.
no,
And
it's different.
the horoscope is one thing, your phase is another thing. You
Mhm.
need to combine the two to get a complete view of the self. But
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, so my last question was just where was that blog, where you write the commentary? Maybe you should mention it to people.
okay, this is on my blog, ecosophia.net, and the second Wednesday of each, I post something on every Wednesday. And so the second Wednesday of each month, I is the book is that's the book club day every month. And
Right.
so our book clubs for the last quite a few months now, certainly, have been working on a vision. We're going to work through the 1937 edition cover to cover. Then I'm going to go into all the differences in the 1925, and then I'm going to cover some stuff that was in the original notes that I have, but that didn't get into either of the published versions. So we're going to get way under the hood.
Interesting. I need to check that out because I think parts of the book will be easier for me to
Very possible, yeah.
comprehend. Very, very possible. It was definitely difficult also with the older English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Irish English, which is,
Oh,
I mean, every Irish person I've ever known was basically a poet, whether they realize it or not. They have a poetic sense of language, which is great if they're writing
yeah.
poetry, but it is not necessarily useful for figuring out where the bathroom is.
What did you just said? Yeah. Oh man, John Michael Greer. I can't get over that you can't feel any of my emotions, but I take that with me.
There we go.
But that's the different planets we're
I
on,
get
right?
different planets. Autism is a strange place, but
Yeah.
I manage.
You like it there.
Well, I don't know. I haven't in this life I haven't experienced anything else.
I cannot recommend Neptune. Don't come here. Don't. It's all too much. Oh, so do you feel content, or is there anything you want to say in the end?
Just if anyone who picks up the book, the earlier essays are all very readable. You can, they're not difficult at all. But Yeats is being sneaky. Read them more than once.
Yeah.
Because he often says much more then you'll get on a first pass. Once you get started with a vision, you'll want to take it very slowly and just kind of pick through it a little at a time and let yourself sit with it. It's not this the 1925 version was not meant as a book to be read. It was meant as a set of knowledge lectures in the Golden Dawn sense, to be studied, analyzed, understood, and then put to practical use. So
do you think from reading it you can almost have a spiritual contact?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And he never really got around to because the occult scene was just falling to bits in Britain and Ireland at that time. He never really got around to working on a lot of the practical applications. That's something I want to put some time into in the years immediately ahead. I think some fun things can be done.
Yeah, you have so much on your mind to do. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. It
Well,
was a
thank you very much.
pleasure seeing you again.